Hello, it's Bailey and welcome back to my channel. I recently saw my friend Jeremy from Jeremy Fee upload a video just talking about his most read authors, and I thought it'd be a fun idea to do because he said he thought were a little surprising, and I think mine might be too. I've been reading for so long that some of these are definitely not authors I would consider favorites by any means, or not anything that I would be interested in anymore. But yeah, this might be an interesting look at my previous reading habits and some authors that I do love. If you're not subscribed to Jeremy, I will make sure and link him down below. I do love his channel. He does a lot of really good reviews, and I love when he does tags. He's a really thorough answerer, so definitely check him out. I'm essentially going to be mentioning any authors that I've read 6 or more of their books. And I'm first going to start with authors that the only reason I've read 6 or more of their books is because they have one specific series that is that long. So I haven't picked up anything else by these authors except the series that I read. So first, with 6 books in the series, I'm going to mention the Robbie series by David Baldassi, or it might be Baldassi, I'm not sure. That's how I'm going to say it. I read the series a couple years ago and I really enjoyed it. It's kind of like an action series, and our main character Will meets this young girl. He also has like a partner throughout the series, and I believe he starts as a hitman. It's been so long since I've read this, but I remember really enjoying the series when I did read it. And then also with 6 books technically is the Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer. I count this as 6 because I did read the 2 like novella books that go with this. There's 4 main books and then the 2 novellas, but this is a series centered around this first book is a retelling of Cinderella, except Cinderella is a cyborg, and each of the following books are also like retellings of fairy tales, but the story like interconnects. And again, I really like these. I would consider this like a 4-star series for me, but I did get all the way through all of them. Also with 6 books, but the series I have finished the most recently is Falling Kingdoms by Rhodes. I read all of these. I think I just finished the series in 2020 actually. And again, this is something I would probably consider like a 4-star series, but I really enjoyed this throughout. I think there were books throughout that got, 3 to 5 stars, but overall, like I said, it's a 4-star series. Next, I have a series that I don't actually own anymore, and it is the Walking Dead graphic novels. I read up to volume 9 and decided it just wasn't really for me anymore. I wasn't really enjoying them, so I unhauled them. But at one point, I did read up to volume 9 in that series. And next, I have what is probably like the biggest throwback for me. That comes with the author Cami, Garcia, and Margaret Stoll. Technically 9 by them I read in the Beautiful Creature series. There is 4 books in the main series, and then there was a spin-off. I think those were called, the first one and that was called like Beautiful Disaster. No, that's not right. Dangerous Creatures? I think it was Dangerous Creatures. And I read the first 2 in that, but I didn't enjoy that. I'm not sure if it went further than those 2. And then I also read, they made a graphic novel off of the series. So I read all of those. And this series I hold dear to my heart. Like, this is my Twilight. Like, I never read Twilight, but this was like the paranormal for me. And technically Cami Garcia, I have read 10 by her because I read another one of her releases and I don't think I really liked that, but this is a highly read series by me, and I've read the main 4 books at least twice. So now I can get into just authors I've in general read 6 books or more from. So I actually have 5 that I've read 6 books from, so I'm going to get into those first. First of which being Colleen Hoover. I grabbed It Ends With Us because this is probably my favorite of hers that I've read, but I have read 6 of her books. She is like I want to call her new adult, like it is fairly young protagonist, like contemporary romance writer, although 2 of her most recent releases, one was technically a thriller and I think her next one was maybe a paranormal, but I found her and her roots are in like contemporary romance. They're usually pretty hard hitting though. Then I have Ellen Hopkins, which this was a big author for me in middle school and high school. All of her books are in verse. And most of these follow topics of like drug abuse and child neglect, really tough topics, but I loved these in school, and I grabbed again Impulse because this is probably my favorite. There is a sequel to this one called Perfect, and Impulse and Perfect are the only two that I still own and have on my shelves. Then I have an author and actually a book that at one point I probably would have considered my all-time favorite. I haven't done a reread for a while, but I just love this when I first read it, and there's 3 in this series, and then I've read just like some other random things by him, and that is David Levithan, this being Every Day. Every Day specifically follows a character who every day wakes up in like a different person's body, but it's always like a teenager of about the same age, and so every day they're living a different person's life, and so sometimes they're a girl, sometimes they're a boy, and this actually follows them meeting someone that they have a connection with, and trying every day to like get to them to actually be able to build a relationship. And I don't know, if you haven't read this, I definitely would recommend it. It's still like something I would consider an all-time favorite, even though, like I said, I haven't reread it for a while. Then I have Rainbow Rowell. This is Fangirl. I feel like I don't have to mention much about Rainbow Rowell. She is rooted in like YA contemporaries. She does have a series that kind of is based off of fan fiction from actually this book, but that closely kind of follows the Harry Potter like guideline. It's almost like Harry Potter fan fiction, if we're being honest. And then my last one that I have read 6 books by is Karen Slaughter. I grabbed my favorite, Pretty Girls, but I have read I think 3 of her just like thrillers, and then I've read 1 series that is her Will Trent series. I think I've read up to book 4 or 5, and that's simply why I've gotten this far with how many books I've read by her. But Karen Slaughter I would definitely consider an all-time favorite author. I love like both trains of writing that she does, whether it's a thriller or like more of an action. So I have 4 more authors here, and these are the ones that we're really getting into. Like, I have read a lot of books by these authors, so these are my top 4 most read authors. And first I want to mention Nicholas Sparks. I grabbed A Bend in the Road. I recently in 2020 actually, like coming into starting my YouTube channel, thought that I was going to sit down and try to reread and read for the first time a lot of his backlist, and I was finding that I actually wasn't enjoying any of them. So there is a couple, including A Bend in the Road, that I haven't reread, but that I still like hold in my mind as things that I really loved, and so I'm not sure if I want to revisit back to them. But this was definitely my introduction to romance. I was reading these in like middle school, and I just think there's themes in some of his books now that at the time I didn't notice, that I definitely was noticing now as an adult. And my other author with 8 books read by, I would seem to predict that I've actually read more of these. I got these numbers based off of my Goodreads, and I was definitely reading this author before I got Goodreads, so I can almost guarantee I missed some. But I have Sarah Dessen. I grabbed just randomly The Truth About Forever, but Sarah Dessen is like the staple to YA contemporaries for me, and again, something I hold highly in my mind, and I actually have reread some of hers, and I think they hold up and I still enjoy them. I'm planning on rereading through more of hers. We have made it to my second most read author, and between my top 2 here, I struggle to say. I do think these 2 are my 2 like all-time favorite authors, but I almost want to say that this one is my favorite, and you'll see what I'm talking about here in just a second. But with 9 books read by him, I have Neal Schusterman, and I grabbed Unwind because I think this is his most like slept on series. I absolutely love the series. I read it for the first time actually in my book club that I started in high school. I think this was our first or second book that we read for that, and since then I've held it so highly in my mind, and I reread the whole there's 5 books. I reread the whole thing last year in 2020, and it's 5 stars across the board for me. Honestly, this series follows premise that like troubled teens, their parents can decide to have them unwound, which basically means that you're donating every single piece of your being. So like your heart would go to somebody, your blood would go to somebody, like every single thing is being used. And but there's also like a rebellion happening against that, and just the world in this is one of my favorite things. and the topics discussed, I can't like eloquently describe it to you. If you haven't checked out the Unwind series, I definitely recommend it. I know a lot of people have been reading Scythe, so he's gotten a lot of attention for that recently, and I think if you enjoy those, you would also enjoy this. And I think this series has an all around like more satisfying ending than that. It is like sci-fi leaning YA dystopian fantasy type books. I also recently read Challenger Deep, which was more of a mental health exploration, and I didn't really like that one, but I did read it. And next, with 10 books, my most read author is actually Sarah J Maas, and that's why I struggled to say Neil Schusterman might be my favorite author over her, just because most of these books are coming from the Throne of Glass series. I've actually only read the Throne of Glass series and then 2 of the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, but this series is so long that it gets that top spot in my most read authors. I read these literally when they were coming out. I read Throne of Glass right when Crown of Midnight was coming out, so these hold a lot of nostalgia for me too, even though I definitely would have read this before I ever read this. But the Throne of Glass series is where it's at for me with Sarah J Maas. I do want to continue and get to more of her stuff. I know her newer stuff is really hyped recently, but she got her roots here, and this is definitely a YA fantasy. I think as it goes on in the series, you could suggest that it's new adult, and I know her newer stuff is more new adult and then leaning towards definitely just adult, but that's where my heart started with her. So yeah, that's the video. Those are my most read authors. Let me know if any of these surprised you, or if you've read any of these that I talked about that are like really throwbacks for me. And also maybe just let me know down below the longest series you've ever read. But thanks for spending some time with me today, and I will see you again very soon. Bye!